Welcome to ComplyPlus Presents. This week is a bit different to what we normally do. I normally have Louis sitting here, but we've got a guest today. We've got Helen Eivers. Helen, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for the invite, Richard.
No, thank you. Thank you. The pleasure's ours. Thank you for agreeing to do this with us. So, wow, we did some research to just look at your career. You've had a very long career.
Yes.
So tell us about it.
Celebrating 40 years in October 1985 when I first started in my nursing career.
Wow. 1985.
1985.
That's a lifetime.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
Very different times.
Yeah. So, I mean, things were quite different back then. What drew you into nursing to start with?
So it was interesting because when I was at school, I was head girl, in sixth form, and I was a people person and thought, you know what, I want to be a hairdresser.
Right.
My mother was not having any of it. So she actually steered me towards considering nursing.
All right.
And because we lived near the local general hospital, it sounded like a good idea, It's only a few bus stops away.
So the practicality of it.
So it was like, yeah, okay, I'll give that a go. And that was kind of where it all took off, really.
All right. So talk me through the training, because that's one of the things nowadays when people talk about the training. How was the nursing training back then?
Yeah, so it was obviously 85. It was before any of the big Project 2000. I mean, that was almost like, big stuff at the time. They were starting to consider it. But, you did practical-based activities. It was very hands-on nursing care, so very little theory, if you like. So you had to demonstrate that proficiency practically. You were very early into managing a ward of people. You were supervising students. And I kind of came into my own, I suppose, with looking after people and the staff and the team. Made some great friends, long life friends. I still meet them now. And it was just that special time where, it was practical. And I think that was the thing that really kept me there, if you like.
That's really good. I mean, you hear a lot of talk about how things have changed to where we are, and even the hours that students are going to spend in doing their attachments, in hospitals. They're reducing the hours, and the focus is a lot more now on the university side of things, assignments and things like that. Obviously, you've had more experience since then. What are your experiences in practice in general as far as students with the new models of training?
I think, having been privileged to go to University of East London to, talk to 100 student nurses, I see anxiety and stress in huge numbers. And, people are worrying about childcare placements, how they're going to do this and juggle a family, and the pressure of theory and the assignments and everything is quite big. And so it was appropriate to go and give them some self-help tools in order to think differently. Well, actually, what are the possibilities that people can actually find solutions within the challenges that they have in order to help them? There's a lot of things around placements where people are not putting themselves forward in order to get their objectives ticked off because they're in the corner, they're quite shy, they don't feel part of the team. So I've just found that, from a theory perspective, whilst it's based on research and it's good practice, that there's this missing element of being able to communicate with people and be able to problem solve. So I noticed that the new way, just from my own experience, that there's a lot of anxiety. When you look at 100 students in a lecture theatre and it's palpable, I think back to the time when I was in the classroom for my theory, and very different.
So this is these are student nurses who are now already going to placements. So you came into East London University to help them with some of the techniques that you use.
Just getting used to them thinking differently to find the solutions for their problems rather than dwelling in the mountain of the problem and making it that mountain and creating that little molehill that actually gives them that ability to look forward to achieving.
That's really good, because I remember my days here in Warwickshire, where I did my placements in the hospitals around Coventry and Warwickshire. Some of the challenges that you have alluded to there, I remember them vividly, really struggling on the wards to get noticed and to get things signed off, because you're under pressure to get your booklet signed off for your competencies. But then you're about to finish your placement and nobody seems to be taking ownership of that. So it was a real challenge. And I remember coming back to Coventry University and a few of us, actually one particular hospital, we were having real problems. And they ended up putting a practice facilitator to come into the hospital to work with us and take us to different places so that we get signed off. And even being allowed time to do that, you just come in and work like a healthcare assistant. Not that there's anything wrong with working like a healthcare assistant, but actually you're there to learn. You're there to be sort of supervised by someone who's supposed to be your mentor and guiding you.
I think the missing thing is confidence.
Yes.
Because if you've got self-belief and confidence, is that getting your things all signed off is no problem, because you present yourself to the opportunity. But what's missing is that confidence. And also being seen as this little person in a big team is very overwhelming.
Yes. Oh, that's really good. It's a very good initiative. I would hope that more universities would take that out. And even East London, I hope that they keep bringing you back to talk to their students.
I'm going back again, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So one thing that came up was working with the pre-hospital teams. So do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so that was interesting because the transition from nursing into ambulance service, I moved back to Ireland and I was in my white dress and my white cardigan and my white hat and I was in a community hospital, so care of the elderly. Yeah. But the ambulances would run out of the local hospital. So this is now like early 90s. And I've come from England to Ireland, and like I'm the most recently qualified. So she goes on the ambulance, and I'm going, yeah, come on, bring it on. It's like I like an adventure. So I get in on my first call in the ambulance, and I say to the driver, they were ambulance drivers back then. Yes. Don't say that word now because it's a naughty word. Yeah. But I said to the driver, like, we're going to a road traffic collision. What do we have? Like, what is the equipment? I had no training. And he pointed to a little white lunchbox between the seats with some bandages, a sling, some safety pins, and a little bit of saline. And I kind of thought, okay, let's go with the flow. Off we went on blue lights. And it just seemed to be natural. It didn't faze me. And I really liked the buzz of being there frontline, helping somebody in need. And so I went on to do my EMT training, emergency medical technician, and then on to be a paramedic. I did my paramedic training in England for 6 weeks, the old way again, and then went back to to Ireland. Excuse me. And from then it took off. I was in a pre-hospital rural area, so one call would be 1 hour. And you had to rely on yourself and your crew to manage a situation, so it was quite a lot of responsibility. But, it was just the most amazing experience, and being able to manage things, particularly when a fireman holds a deceased child from a house fire and hands it to you. Like, there's no training for that, you know?
It's quite traumatic, isn't it? It could be quite traumatic,
absolutely. And it's almost like you build your own resilience. You don't know how, you don't know when, but you just get on with it, and then you finish that call, you go to the next one. So my passion has grown from very early days of pre-hospital care that actually you're on your own in that situation.
Wow. I worked as a nurse in the hospital, and I did a bit of district nursing nothing close to what you're describing there. So there was no training at all on additional support for the team after dealing with such traumatic events.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the opportunity for, employee assistance program, but that's not instant. That's not, I need something now. And talking therapy is not for everybody.
Yes.
And it's, I was in Dublin. I did my advanced paramedic program. I was also a paramedic tutor. During that time, I was doing my advanced paramedic. So we did some training with the fire brigade in Dublin. And we were on calls every 10 minutes. We were going to different places and going into a part of Dublin where there was a lot of drugs. And this guy saying, yeah, me bud, my friend. And you're walking into this house that's got no lights, it's freezing cold, and you've got somebody who's in respiratory arrest from drugs. And it's a whole different ball game, So there's no warm lighting for you to manage. You don't know who's round the next room. So you're learning these things on the hoof yourself, albeit with some support, with your crew. But, there's nothing that prepares you for that inevitable situation. Scene safety is kind of installed into you in training. But you're there to get this guy breathing again, find a vein, give him some drugs, and then process it afterwards. But no, you need to go on the next call now.
There's no relapse.
And it could be a sudden infant death, and now you're resuscitating a baby who's 6 weeks old on a kitchen table.
Wow. Have things changed as far as paramedic training and support for pre-hospital and primary care workers since then?
No. So, the high rates of work-related stress are everywhere, aren't they? Just under 50%. And your protocol is there might be some critical incident stress debriefing. So if you're lucky, there's a peer support worker. But what relationship do you have with that peer in order to talk about what's just gone on? And for me, talking is not necessarily the best way of processing it. So, you can go and have some talk therapy and 6 sessions, which is resourcing. It's giving you ways to kind of have well-being and walk more, drink more, doing all those things that's good for mental health. But actually, all the time, I've got this log of traumatic incidents building in my brain that's giving me triggers. So when a radio goes off in an ambulance or the siren goes off, I'm also connected to that because the last event that I heard that was when I went to a traumatic event. And nobody can fix that.
Yeah, that's...
in the service.
Yeah.
There's nothing to fix that and prevent it. And people go out with PTSD and burnout. And at the end of the day, who knows? Who knows what's in everybody's brain that needs fixing? But actually, through the development of my own, development, I've learned that actually, yes, there are techniques that can help.
So that's really interesting. When you think about some of the big events, tragedies, like Grenfell Tower, like what's happened at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, events like that, other acts of terrorism. You'd like to think that there's something in place to help people because this is like going to a war zone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for us, actually, people that don't work in those areas, you'd think that there's something in place to support people after the events and debriefing and ensuring that they are fine and they get the support that they need.
Yeah, I actually met a paramedic that was at the Ariana Grande concert and work got too much for him that he had to take a different position within the trust. So more admin, back office role, again PTSD. But also Grenfell was in our community when I worked as a clinical lead. in an NHS service, and we had staff that witnessed horrific things that night. They had family and friends who were in the tower, and when you're meeting that person the next morning, like this is 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning when this fire took place, and when you're meeting your staff the next day to give solace, some support to, is talking about it the best thing? Re-traumatizing, and actually through talking about events that people have witnessed, the vicarious trauma that you can also traumatize others, and what is the solution to that? It's not always talking. It's not always. It's not always there for people to be able to reactivate the trauma. There are things that are out there that can help dissipate triggers and events, which through havening techniques I have found just off the scale, supporting people to recover from traumatic events.
All right. So just picking up from what you've said about Grenfell Tower, the tragedy there. That's when we were running the 111 service. 111
Correct.
service. Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more then, because for a lot of people, they know that they'll ring 999 or they'll ring 111, and even the fact that you are with 111 service, you're actually involved with the people that were there, dealing with the event as it was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where does 111 fit with all this, and how does it fit with the pre-hospital care and these emergency services?
So 111, back in 2011, I joined 111, and it was the birth of a new from NHS Direct to 111 to maintain telephone triage, but have non-clinical health advisors taking calls and having them streamed to clinical advisors in order to get the best outcome for the patients. Because when people ring and say, I want antibiotics, for example, it's not always what they need. So telephone triage, get people to the most appropriate outcomes, whether they need an ambulance, A&E or urgent care, or even just home care, looking after children who are sick at home. So, yeah, when you've got, we had some significant traumas through that service where we had an undercover reporter, we had Grenfell, we had a CQC visit, all within 3 months of each other. So, massive kind of pressures on when you've got minimal resources. And as a clinical lead, you're there to support people, you're there to support processes, investigations, etc. So there was a lot of pressure, I suppose, in order to maintain the service and support the business or the social enterprise with commissioners and with NHS England and NHS Digital, who is the software that runs beneath the 111 service. So in relation to 111, for me personally, as a clinical lead, I lived there almost. It was my heart, my soul. Particularly through COVID, when, we had 2,000 people. Like if you had 40 to 50 people generally waiting to get through, answer a call within 90 seconds, that was busy. Like you had 2,000 calls waiting in early COVID, February, March that year. And you had constant changes of countries now that were being, part of it. And you had public health service, you had GPs coming in. There was so much activity. We actually had nurses that had died on the phone waiting to get through that were working in local hospitals. We had nurses that had, maybe a team of 8 people that were nursing staff in an intensive care that had all passed away. A significant rise in stress-related mental health problems as a result of so much. And then you're looking after staff. You want to go home at 2:00 because you need to get sleep because you're on the next morning.
Again,
And they're looking at you with their puppy eyes saying, please don't go. So, yeah, a very high-pressured service that, you always want to do your best for.
So that sort of pressure, what does it do to you? You know, you're the lead, the clinical lead, and you've got all these people relying on you. You've got over 2,000 people working in that service. You know, what does that do to you?
So my default is I'm an avoider. I'm a peacekeeper, and I'm also a pleaser and a hyperachiever. So when you put that mix together, you just want to go on. You want to do the best you can. You put yourself last. So you do all these things because you want to, the patient needs you, the staff needs you, the commissioners need you, everything is needed of you. Training goes on, so you just carry on, don't you? You use your resilience over your healthcare career to push you forward. But then you start emotional eating because you want to start finding comfort somewhere. So I had 2-hour drive to and from work at that time. So I would be a fast food on the way home. That became my norm. So you start putting weight on. You're having lots of takeaways because that's the quickest thing. You're not sleeping very well. I started to lose my hair. I ended up with high blood pressure, and that became the reality of, hold on a minute, stop.
So changing moment, that's like the trigger, really.
Yeah. And we had a patient death in 111, which went to coroners. But thankfully on my watch, we had only 2 in 10 years. And I profess a quality service. I was always looking for quality improvements. I was always looking for the best thing for the patient. So we would have lots of things in place in order to preserve safety, one of our NMC codes. And what I found was that actually burnout is something that's significant. And when you go to a coroner event, the family want answers. This coroner event was massive. 8 barristers, family, media. That nothing prepares you as a clinical lead to go into that situation. And that for me was a massive traumatic event because the onus was on me to submit lots of legal submissions because, again, we wanted answers for the family. We had lots of learning. But I also had staff that were in the evidence box for 4 hours each, including myself, and I needed to be there for them. I wanted answers for the family. I wanted answers to support the staff. And that for me was the biggest nail in my career that I just thought, stop. So burnout was big for me.
I'm trying to think back of my own career as a nurse and a lot of things happening around, even coroner's events. But because I wasn't in a leadership position like you were, maybe I'm required to write a statement, or I'm going to give some oral evidence for a few minutes, 20 minutes or so. That sounds really significant, and having to take all that burden without any infrastructure for support for yourself, but even for your staff as well, that must have been really challenging.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, I was very lucky that the PR person that we had high emotional intelligence and could see when there was a need for some one-to-one time during a break or during a lunch break from coroners, where others may have been more matter-of-fact, checking their emails or life goes on. But actually people that can identify and connect with you emotionally is very important in order to get you through what you need to do. You know, evidence, like you're going into a witness box with that much evidence and legal submissions. And yeah, that was tough.
So when you look at it, even now that you're outside of that system, what needs to be done to prepare people better? For example, something significant like going through a coroner's procedures and having to give evidence and then looking after staff. What sort of things need to be in place to better support staff and those managers and leaders who are involved in those processes?
So for me, we have mental first aiders in the workplace, which is great. So that means that people are more aware of stress, more aware of anxiety. But actually, I think everybody needs to be aware and be able to have some tools and skills that can help that person in that moment. Because when you're stressed and you're anxious, you can't perform to be your best. You can't create relationships that you need to have to get you all through a journey together. And you can't have the well-being that's necessary. So there are three big things that I think we need to be able to have. And when we're stressed, we can't perform to be our best. So people that have got the ability to support people emotionally in real time is very key to be able to bring that energy down into some sort of calmness, rather than us working off that nervous energy, which is exhausting. So yeah, I think having emotional first aid skills, it is key that you can, you know, getting into a witness box is tough.
Yeah. So that brings me into the stage where you are now, because you had to leave that job in the end and almost have to start afresh. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so it was, I was running an investigation for HR for a significant person in the workplace. And it took me almost 10 months to investigate. And I wrote a thesis. It was like 10,000 words. Ridiculous, right, for a report, for an investigation. But my bottom line, I'm also a perfectionist. So my stickler was there because I needed my stickler for my legal submissions, of course. So it stayed with me and I wanted to do the best I could objectively. So in the end, when I completed this investigation, I was coaching this person through the outcome of this investigation, through the facts. And there was some learning that needed to take place. And as I coached this person, I didn't really realise that I was at the end of my battery, yet I still wanted to soldier on. And I couldn't see those signs until one day I just slammed my laptop down in the middle of this Teams coach meeting. And I walked into the HR room and I hit my head off the wall. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. And there were so many times when I left and I just had to go on sick leave. I don't do sick leave. I had one big flu in probably my whole career and I don't do sickness. And I just thought, I can't do this no more. So I went on for 3 months leave. I thought at 6 weeks, no, I'm fine, I'll go back. And I went back and I thought, no, I'm not fine. So I resigned and, I resigned. And I resigned in a victim mindset, which was not me. And that victim mindset, I would wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I would be blaming and I'd say, no, I need to have a conversation with that person because they did that to me and this person did that to me. And I became very much this person that I didn't know anything about. And I thought, no, hang on a minute. I need to change. So I had this opportunity to become part of a team that I had done a little bit of training with in my thinking, Go Mad Thinking. MAD stands for Make a Difference. And it was so refreshing. I almost felt like when I went to this new surroundings in the middle of Loughborough, 5 acres, I walked around that after having some training in my how to think differently. And I just cried. I cried these tears of release that I found my people. And it was almost like a spiritual awakening, which I didn't have a lot of. I mean, it wasn't my thing, really. But it was almost like I was reconnecting with the right people because they were getting me to actually think about my thinking. And actually, that's where it all starts. It all starts with how you think, which leads to how you feel, which leads to how you act in your behaviour. And I realised all of that time, you know, I was leading people, giving so much that I was doing. I was in the doing. I was constantly reacting in that insanity loop because of all the things that was fired at me. And actually, when you just sit back and you start to think, that's powerful.
Yeah. So you are thinking more about yourself now.
Yes.
And self-care in that sense.
Self-care. What is it I need to heal? Because actually, I'm not a victim. I'm in control of what I do and how I think and feel. And what are the tools that I now need to help me do that? Which led me to meet the most amazing guy, Mark Perkins, who was also in the Go Mad Thinking team, but was also an NLP trainer. NLP being neuro-linguistic programming. And when I was learning the methodology of how to think differently, I was getting myself involved in the training and facilitation. I would do little snippets and help Mark support the team. But after the end of day one, I just collapsed in the chair and I just thought, and I was in tears. And he did this technique on me called a fast phobia technique. He brought me back into the coroner's witness box and he made me rewind and forward and rewind and forward and rewind. And he used my brain in order to erase the emotional content of what was in that memory that was stopping my confidence being this new person. And within half an hour, that's why I can talk to you about the coroners here and now. There is no emotion attached to it because I've learned to progress my healing. And there was something about NLP, how you communicate with people and how you process memories that really intrigued me and said, I want more of this.
So it did make a difference, made a huge difference to you.
Yeah, both Go Mad Thinking, conscious mind thinking, and the NLP unconscious processes were very, very powerful. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm not crying. You know, I'm healing. So yeah, and I'm thinking, scratching my head thinking, yeah, there's a lot about the thinking tools that's very powerful for people to build their self-belief. But I want to dig deeper. I want to go into the unconscious mind and I want to find out what exactly I can do now in order to help myself build so that I can be that phoenix rising that can spread this power to others where they need it.
So these techniques can be taught. You're saying that nurses, paramedics, all these frontline workers can learn these techniques for self-care in a practical way.
Yes, absolutely. So when you have anxiety, it's a feeling. Yeah, we don't always know why we're feeling this way, but if you were to just change the submodalities of that feeling, changing the colour, change the way it moves and spins in your body, you can dissipate that feeling, you can turn it around. Like, for example, if you close your eyes and you imagine you are in the moment looking through your own eyes, that's something that's very powerful that can build positive feelings. So you could imagine building a time when you were really confident. And if I said to you, close your eyes, go back into that time, float down into your body, see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt. You can really bring yourself into that moment of confidence. And if you make that bigger, brighter, bolder, you can really feel that, and you can anchor that state to something that actually, when you would be touching your little finger and thumb, you can anchor that feeling into a sensation that you can create at any point, at any experience. So why not be able to bring this to the front line, to give confidence, to give calm, right here, right now, when you need it, in the middle of a busy shift? Absolutely is the right thing to do.
All right. So you have talked about the NLP side and a bit of the heavening. So I know you have run many sessions of the different programs that you are working on. But if we look at the tools that you have developed, can you talk us through how they work and also how they've been received on the groups that you've worked with?
Yeah, so after NLP came havening techniques. So it's a psychosensory technique that you use you could rub your palm over your palm, create a delta wave in your brain. You automatically reduce cortisol, stress hormone, and you increase serotonin and oxytocin. So you can use that in order to feel calm in that moment. You can use it therapeutically. So I've used it with frontline staff to heal triggers that create anxiety. So, for example, when people have got an anxiety response at work, they may not always understand why it's there. But when you probe through therapy, you can find an event that actually was traumatic and heal that event with havening techniques. But you can also use it in a present moment where you can allow somebody to haven and distract them, which if they're already in an intense emotional state, so they've received bad news, they've witnessed something traumatic, you can haven and distract them. The delta wave will actually prevent the amygdala from encoding that moment as trauma, and therefore they can just get on with their day. So havening is really important for safety and protection. And when you're working in a high-pressured environment, that's something that's missing. So therefore, being able to induce safety and protection and that calming presence for yourself is so important, that so you can do the best for the patient and for yourself for the rest of that shift. So I have helped heal present or past memories for frontline staff in order to allow them to rejoice. So, for example, I had a psychologist one time, and a psychologist coming for havening was interesting in itself. And she said, I come home every evening and I really tear the head off all my family. I come home and there's no toilet roll in the toilet. And it's like, God, why is there no toilet roll in the toilet? And she loses the plot, because she's carrying a heavy load on her back. She's not putting the heavy load down. She doesn't know how to put the heavy load down, and there's a trigger there straight away. So she's come to have some havening in order to get rid of that anger trigger. And havening released it for her, because it's not only in that moment, it's linked to past traumas where we can just have these heavy negative emotions. It's been really helpful in lots of things. A civil servant, a high-pressure job, carried guilt for 25 years. And he went to all the talking therapy, all the alternative methods he could. He still carried that heavy load. He brought his mother over from India when the birth of his child happened, and his mother died in the UK. And he felt so guilty and responsible. And he came to me at a havening event, and I would share how to do self-havening for managing stress and anxiety. And I said, look, if you want to book in, we can do a healing on that event. He booked in 90 minutes, his guilt was gone. So I thought there's so much things around this release of negative emotions that allows people to just behave in the way that doesn't serve them, and it allows to release. So havening, NLP, and positive intelligence. And I had the pleasure of being introduced to a free grant coaching program with Positive Intelligence, which has been created by Shazad Shamin, who is a neuroscientist, done research with Stanford University, to find out that actually in our survival brain, we have a group of saboteurs that are responsible for our stress and our anxiety, and they live in our survival brain. And they're patterns that we would have had as a child. So my avoider, I had an alcoholic father, so I was used to keeping the peace, and I was also a pleaser, because then I would always make sure I want to keep everything going and everything happy. But actually those saboteurs don't serve us as adults. So whether you are working in the front line, you are a leader, you are a commissioner, you are ICB, organisation, you are in it, whatever level or tier of leader you are, we all have the saboteurs. And actually, the patterns that we held, childhood patterns, no longer serve us now. We need to become aware of who are the saboteurs in our brain and how can we quieten them in order to improve our performance, our relationships and our well-being. And there's a very significant study done to show that after 6 weeks of quietening your saboteurs, in an MRI scan, you have more grey matter, more neurons. Neuroplasticity is something that is very powerful, that if we learn to think in a different way, we then behave in a different way. We also feel a different way, and therefore that can be really empowering for people to use that technique in order to just imagine as a leader, Myers-Briggs, we all know the personalities in our team, but actually imagine knowing who those saboteurs are in our team and actually how we can work together to quieten them to get the best for the patient and the outcomes we need.
Well, that's really interesting. So you're saying there can actually be noticeable physical change in the brain,
Yes.
which can then improve then how we feel in ourselves, but also then the care that we can give to others.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why is this not part of the NEST training program? Even the idea that a psychologist is coming, nurses are coming to this sort of course, it's almost like you think, hang on, who is looking after the carers? Who's looking after those that are providing care to others?
Yes. So we as nurses, we prioritise people as part of our code of conduct, but who's prioritising us? And actually, the skills and tools, the gap that I see is very visible, very palpable from the people I see for healing the past, is that they have no skills to manage the real-time stress and anxiety. That actually, if we had a little pocket of tools that we could use from Havening, NLP and Positive Intelligence, and we create this strategy that we use to become aware of what we're thinking about, actually quieten our judge, the inner critic, so we can actually perform better. We can use the tools that we can actually create this downgrade, this cortisol, which cortisol is the reason for burnout, hair loss, high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke. There's a lot of evidence and research attached to these 5 negative emotions: anger, fear, guilt, hurt and sadness, that actually create this mind-body connection and cause havoc that give us this heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, high cortisol, and diabetes, and how much of this physical disease that people are going off sick with. And you bring it back to stress.
Yes.
Actually give them a tool that they can use right now, right here, and we dissipate the stress. So let's say, for example, I put my hand on a hot stove. Milliseconds, my hand is off that hot stove. But imagine mentally, I've put my hand on that hot stove and I've had to break bad news to a parent or to a family's relatives, or worse still, I might have given the wrong drug. How long am I keeping my hand on that hot stove? It's not seconds, it's not milliseconds, it's days, it's hours, it's weeks, it's days. I can't take my hand off the hot stove, but I need to learn this is how I can take my hand off the hot stove, because, okay, I can take learning if it's to do with patient safety errors and I've done something wrong, but I don't have to keep my cortisol running in my body. I know the techniques that I can use to just resume that neutral status and you know, and I can perform better then. I can be well. I can have better relationships because I've now used that. It's almost like, you know, the golden buzzer on Britain's Got Talent?
Oh, yes, yes.
It's just like having a golden buzzer.
That feeling.
And it's like, oh, look at all that confetti.
Yes.
And just bring it into your body and then move on with your day.
Yeah. So this is all in, you know, within your emotional first aid course. You've developed a course called Emotional First Aid and Practice. Is this all covered in that course?
Yes. So I create some educational awareness about how you think, feel and act, because not everybody understands the outcome of behaviour and how you can actually control thinking in relation to particularly your saboteurs. You quieten down your saboteurs, or maybe it's just a feeling you have in a certain situation. Actually teaching people how to anchor calmness, relaxation, happiness, energy, confidence, and have that in that very moment before you go in to do an interview because you want to progress. Go in and do your presentation. Excuse me. Go in and have that challenging conversation with a peer or with a patient's family, whatever that is in that moment. Run your emotional first aid and practice tool resource kit, and then step into that moment with that confidence, with that serotonin and cortisol, you know, at a safe level. We need cortisol for motivation, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But we just need
Balance
enough to behave and perform. So these tools help us in intense emotional moments, which is fantastic because we can protect our brain. I do a red, amber, green. So we have red for now, this panic and how... I had a lady one time who rang 111 who was getting an ambulance, category 2 ambulance, because she couldn't complete a sentence. And anyone who has panic attacks knows that feeling where you just can't speak. And within 30 seconds of taking control of her breath, called a physiological sigh, Dr. Andrew Huberman, you may want to look him up, a neuroscientist.
Breathe out, yeah.
Within 30 seconds, that lady was talking to me on the phone. I've had panic attacks where it's taken 5, 10, 15 minutes. And actually, the power of that breath is important. So we'll have red, that we can take control of the emotion state right now. And we have amber, where we can manage self-belief, confidence, and we can anchor calm and change the feeling. And then we have the green resources, which is actually creating habits every day. So, for example, we all have a habit where we get up, we wash ourselves, we brush our teeth. We have got 10-second moments in every activity that we can just be aware of the sensation of the toothbrush on our teeth, the hot water on our hair, the shampoo, how it feels. If you take those 10-second moments and you build a powerful habit over time, you can actually quieten that survival brain and actually move into that creative, innovative thought processes that is that power of solutions. And you know, we all want to achieve our goals. But actually we build a neuroplasticity. We build more neuron pathways that serve us than hinder us. And that's powerful. So, yeah, it's red, amber, green, emotional resources for here and now.
That's really good, because in nursing and healthcare, social care in general, we use the traffic light system for risk assessment anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
So we use it on others. So it'd be nice actually if we can use it on ourselves as well.
Yes.
In that sense.
You have your own traffic light system to prioritise yourself, prioritise your self-care so that you can practice effectively. That's one of the other codes in our NMC, is to practice effectively, promote professionalism and trust. And actually, when we're running in a stress and our hormones are running and we're burning out, we can't be the best we can be for us, and therefore we can't be the best we can be for patients. I often imagine a world where we've got these people who are in the front line and they're so in control of themselves. I mean, patient safety has a whole new level of reducing incidents, reducing errors, reducing harm, because we're in control of this.
So it does affect the service delivery as well.
Absolutely.
In every sense, yeah.
Absolutely. You think about those student nurses, those nursing associates who are students, and they're no longer sitting in the corner. They're getting out there, they're introducing themselves with confidence, they're ticking off all of their placement objectives. They're in there doing it with that style that is, I can and I will.
Well, that's really good. Look, Helen, this is all really interesting. I know you are running a masterclass today in Coventry, and I'm going to be a participant. And I'm really looking forward to this session. I did the pre-course assessment last night, and I'm glad that I did it last night actually rather than last week, because I had other insights over the weekend that really helped me. So I'm really looking forward to the session today. What shall we expect today? How do you summarize it?
So, insight is one thing, being aware of something, and actually using your awareness of your own thought processes and how you think is very powerful, because you are in control of how you respond in certain situations. Well, in every situation. And I want people to be able to have that empowerment, to be able to take control, be who they naturally are, and get what they want to get out of life. So imagine going to the end of your life. And this is a Denzel Washington speech he made to undergraduates in America. I will never forget it. And he brought them to the end of their life. They're like graduates at early 20s. You go to the end of your life, and the ghosts of the skills you never used, they came to you and they say, we've got to go to the grave together because you never used me. And just to think about all of those skills that we have in our own body and mind that we can use to empower ourselves and get to the end of our life fulfilled. That Maslow, get to the top of self-actualization, do the things you're passionate about, and stand up for your true, authentic self. There's so many people who I know, neurodivergent, that are coming out as adults, getting diagnosed as autistic or ADHD, and actually they've worn a mask for years. And I want to empower people to say, I am who I am, I can, and I will. And I want this to be able to be very palpable in this class today, and for people to walk out with head held high, shoulders back, chest out, going for it.
Well, thank you very much, Helen, for joining us today. What a illustrious career you've had, from, starting out as a nurse and then going into primary care, pre-hospital, and, everything that we've discussed today. I'm really awed, at what you have contributed to society, but also now, starting with yourself, looking after yourself, but then wanting to help other nurses and healthcare professionals looking after themselves better so that they can perform at the most optimal that they can do. I'm really privileged to be sitting here with you today.
Thank you.
And also to attend the masterclass today. I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm hoping that we'll have more conversations in the future, not only talking about nursing, but the wider healthcare, social care ecosystem, with so many changes going on at the moment, at this point in time where we have a new government that is taking things in a different direction.
Yes.
NHS England has been abolished. CQC has new leadership. What's going to happen with the ICBs? What's going to happen to adult social care? It's a very testing time, and I don't think you could have brought this course in, at a better time. I think this is exactly what's needed right now for people to be able to sit back, self-care, and then be able to deal with all this uncertainty as it comes. So I'm really thankful that you came to talk to us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, look, thank you very much, Helen. And we look forward to discussing further. So all the social media platforms our teams will be posting, and we hope to hear from you. And also, if you have any further questions for Helen and you want to find out more, your company is Endless Possibilities.
Yes, correct. Endless Possibilities Limited, yeah.
Yeah, so Endless Possibilities Limited. Helen is on LinkedIn, she's on Facebook, she's on Instagram, so all the major social media platforms. But also, we'll be talking about Helen a lot from our business as well, so look out for all the handles for the Multitude Training Group. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much for joining us today.